Alright, so I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with the New York Yankees, a real kick-ass baseball team. And I'm pretty sure we all know the man who's the reason the franchise is so successful. Yeah, this is George Steinbrenner, aka the boss. And today, I just want to take the time to point out the absolute bullshit George here went through. The media and the MLB gave him so much shit for the way he ran the team, even though the team was arguably the best under his reign. Even worse, there were many other celebrities at this time who did way worse than him, and the media just ignored it. Alright, let's get started. Fay Vincent orchestrated a conspiracy to take down Steinbrenner in 1990. I am not making this up. Okay, so George owned the team for about 17 years at this point in 1990. And unlike those other boring-ass generic franchise owners, George was cool as hell. He had a very win-at-all-costs attitude, and it paid off. The Yankees did so well under his reign. He turned the Yankees into a global world-class brand, okay? And the MLB hated that. So Fay Vincent, who was the MLB commissioner, decided to play God and find a way to tear down George. What happened was that George was a little pissed off at one of his players named Dave Winfield. And George, being the aggressive go-getter he is, decided to pay some low-life scum gambler named Howard Spira to get dirt on him. Okay, shut up. Quit clutching your pearls. Look, I agree that this was a pretty unethical move on George's part. It was perfectly legal, but it broke the rules of the MLB. But what pisses me off is that the MLB at this point had a very long history, like 90 years of such, of bribery, match fixing, segregation, racist ownership policy, mafia infiltration, and denying the existence of steroids until fucking 2000. But when George does something that is the tiny fraction of all the things I just mentioned, oh my god, he's a tyrant! He's a mad psycho ruler on a power trip! He's a dictator! Oh my god, do you not see how much of an overreaction this is? As I said earlier, the MLB already hated George. He was a very famous man, provided New York with good times in the press. Okay, enter Fay Vincent, who all of a sudden decided to do something about George because he's such a saint, right? And what did Fay Vincent do? He banned George Steinbrenner from baseball for life! What the hell? Dude, you cannot be serious! Like, he could have just made him pay a $40,000 fine to make up for what he did, or he could have made him take a 3-week course on MLB institutional rules. Dude, I wouldn't have cared if he put Howard Spira into an ICBM missile and shot him directly into the sun. But a lifetime ban on George Steinbrenner over a violation that wasn't 100% proven? Come on. Okay, so after all this happened, the media absolutely tore George to shreds. They weren't even going after the scandal anymore. They were just attacking him personally. We're calling him this tyrannical overlord trying to dominate baseball. Okay, did George have a big ego, and was he very controlling of the team? Yes, to both of those. But he wasn't a bad man. On the contrary, he was actually a very good person, but the media obviously hid that. Let me give you an example. Do you honestly think that the media would tell you that George arranged for a deaf boy to receive benefits that eventually allowed him to hear again? Nope. They'd rather say he's a shit person and completely lie about how unpopular he is. Very tough man. He was a hard ass, and to be fair, he was very autocratic. But he's the owner of the Yankees. You kind of have to be quite authoritarian when you are in that position. But just because someone has a very strong personality doesn't make them unkind or a bully. Joan Rivers is a good example of that. Now, something else is, if George was alive in today's times and he was a woman and he still ran the Yankees like the way he did in the 80s and 90s, literally no one would be criticizing him. Like, nobody. And if someone did, they would probably get scorned by the media. Quite interesting, isn't it? Look, I don't care what your gender is when it comes to leadership. It's about decisiveness and action. I could not give a shit less. I actually admire bold women like Rihanna, for example. But people, it has to be on an equal plane. If you are so concerned about people like George being too harsh or too demanding, you better be holding Miss Truth or Dare right here to the same standard, or Miss I Want Privacy here. The double standards when it comes to gender, among many other things, is absolutely unreal. Now imagine for me, if you will, that there's a male rock star and he's very talented, but he's also quite mean and not nice to his crew, and he happens to be a conservative. Well, the media would jump on him. They'd interview his employees, his crew members, and people would be all over social media writing emotional posts with the most insulting hashtags like choose kindness, love thy neighbor, all of that BS. Then say there's a female musical artist who's also very talented, but she's also really mean and acts like a bitch on wheels, and she's a liberal. Oh, then the media is then talking about how great of a work ethic she has, how amazing she is, how she doesn't take shit from anyone, girl power, boss bitch. So let me get this straight. If the same actions are committed, not adjusted at all, and the only difference is that if a man who's a conservative doing it and the other is a woman who's a liberal, the severity of the situation becomes worse. What the? That makes no sense. Look, I'm sorry, but this crap kind of shows how wrong we are as a society. But listen, I'm tired of talking about this, and I'm sure you're all sick of hearing me yapping about it too. So I'll leave it at this. We need a lot more authenticity in this world. You don't have to like George Steinbrenner, and I can understand why people wouldn't like him. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm asking you to do is take some time out of your day today to think about what I've spoken about today. Because everything I just talked about in this video is because of the shitload of people being phonies. So maybe we could all make an effort to be, less entitled, less judgmental, and treat each other with decency and respect. Actually, no, that's too boring. Anyways, see ya.